President Emmanuel Macron of France is in India today, in Mumbai to be specific, and we've had wide-ranging discussions, very fruitful discussions between the two heads of state. The special relationship with France is a tried and tested relationship that goes back decades. In fact, it goes back to the 1950s, just after independence. India had purchased a number of French fighters like the Ouragan, Mystères, etc., Toufanis, along with the AMX French tanks, light tanks that had been used in the 1962 war. So, the simple fact is that it is a tried and tested relationship. When India carried out the nuclear test, the rest of the world, the entire Western world had, imposed sanctions on India, less France. The only country that stood by us, only Western country that stood by us in that particular phase, very delicate phase, was France. Both the countries have a tradition of strategic autonomy which they prize, which they guard very jealously. And France, had its force, the Frappe. It had an independent nuclear deterrent, distinct from the NATO arsenal, the American arsenal. It has always been looking for self-sufficiency. To that extent, the essential philosophies of the two countries match. Liberty, fraternity, equality, these slogans came to us from France. We are two democracies, very, very well-established democracies, and that constitutes a very major basis for our deep and abiding relationship. This time around, we have a very major defense deal, the mother of all defense deals, in the offing. India is planning to go in for 114 Rafales. Please don't forget that the Indian Air Force has already operating 36 Rafale jet fighters, which put in a remarkably proficient performance during Operation Sindoor. They more than earned their wings, their spurs in that conflict, the most recent conflict, and even otherwise. This is a combat-tested, combat-proven aircraft weapon system. Not only the prime vector itself, the aircraft itself, but the family of weapons associated with it, the 500-kilometer plus range Scalp cruise missiles, the Hammer shorter range guided weapons, the Meteor beyond visual range missiles of 150 kilometers range, which have proved lethal in Operation Sindoor. It comes with that entire ecosystem, the entire ecosystem, and we are now going to progress beyond the simple plain buyer-seller relationship into joint manufacture, co-development, manufacture in India, with about 60% of these planes will be manufactured in India. 18 will be made available to us in the flyaway condition starting from 2028, and the balance 90 plus will be all manufactured in India. The Rafale, the Dassault, already has tie-up with the Tata Advanced Systems for the production of the Rafale fuselages in India. With the Safran, we are working on the engine production in India, and Safran is going to help us with a 114 kilonewton engine, which will power our AMCA and our light combat aircraft Mark II. So, what is the cherry on the cake is not just the purchase of weapon systems. It is the transfer of technology, it is the joint manufacture, the collaborative ventures. The MRO facility for the Rafale, the French will set up in India. That means all the Rafale that are operating in Middle East, in Asia, Southeast Asia, they will all be serviced here, they will all be overhauled here in India. So, at the end of it, if you count the 36 Rafales already in the Air Force, 26 Marine Rafales coming to our Navy, maybe more, maybe more. We have about 170 plus to 200 Rafales that will, just next to the Su-30I. There are 270 Su-30Is in the Indian Air Force, and now you're going to add about 200 plus minus Rafales, which will form the backbone. Now, there is a school of thought, skeptics which say that this is a 4.5 generation aircraft. True, it's combat proven. True, it's very well integrated. It's very well integrated with the Indian Air Force, with the Indian Defence Services already. And instead of going in for a new fighter, where we would have had to hold trials and tests and this and that, and then the whole process of induction would start, it would take 10 to 20 years. By that time, the aircraft that you would have purchased would have been thoroughly out of date and of no use to man or beast. The simple fact is that you need it, and you need it very, very urgently. You need it very urgently. That is the problem. There is a school of thought in India that why are we going in for 4.5 generation when the rest of the world is graduating to the 5th generation, 6th generation. The simple fact is we need to induct combat squadrons with great speed and dispatch. The strength of the Indian Air Force is now down to 29 squadrons. We needed 42 squadrons, today we have just 29. Please don't forget that the Pakistani Air Force has a strength of 25 squadrons, right? The Indian Air Force is required to deal with a 3.5 front threat, 3.5 front threat, Pakistan to the west, China to the north, and Bangladesh now trying to pose a problem in the east. We need to deal with a 3.5 front threat. China has, 4.5 generation Air Force, entirely 4.5 generation Air Force with about 400 5th generation fighters. These will be 1000 5th generation fighters by 2030. And they've already, testing the prototypes of the 6th generation fighters. May I remind everyone that Pakistani pilots are today as we speak in China getting training on the J-35 stealth fighters. It would be a joke of the century if Pakistan introduces 5th generation fighters in South Asia ahead of India and gains a strategic advantage, an edge. It would be the height of criminality, criminal negligence on our part if we let that happen. So the thing is that India is going in for its homegrown AMCA. The Safran will provide the jet engines for that AMCA. But the problem is that AMCA would come through only around 10 years from today. It may, because we've gone to the private sector, the Tatas are doing it, maybe they'll do it faster in 5, 6, 7 years. But can you afford to have such a capability gap with Pakistan? For God's sake, forget about China, with Pakistan for the next 10 years. So we will have to go in for an interim stopgap measures. Maybe that is the Su-57, we don't know. We have to wait and watch. But with France, this was a very timely deal. This was a very much essentially called for deal, without which we would have been in serious trouble. So I think this is something that needs to be concluded at the fastest, and it will only cement Indo-French relations. Jai Bharat, Jai Hind.